When someone you care about begins to withdraw, whether it's a sudden silence or a slow fading presence, the human instinct is often to lean in, to seek answers, to close the emotional gap as quickly as possible. This reaction is deeply rooted in our biology. We are wired for connection, and when that connection feels threatened, our nervous system perceives it as danger. And so we reach out, not always with wisdom, but with urgency. But in relationships, especially romantic ones, there is a deeper truth that often goes unnoticed. The one who masters stillness masters the moment. Stillness is not about doing nothing. It's not passivity. It's presence without reaction. It's a deliberate pause. And for a woman who is evolving into her power, this stillness becomes a sacred space, a boundary of energy that says, I don't chase confusion. I watch it reveal itself. When he ignores you, whether through emotional distance, delayed replies, or outright silence, the first thing you must recognize is this: your response is your power. The moment you react impulsively, sending long messages, demanding answers, or over-explaining your feelings, you surrender that power. You shift the focus away from his behavior and onto your reaction. But when you remain still, emotionally centered, and grounded in your self-worth, you allow the silence to reveal its purpose. Because sometimes, silence isn't just a lack of communication. It's a test of alignment. A woman who knows her value doesn't respond to emotional games with emotional chaos. She responds with composure, not to manipulate, not to create reverse psychology, but because her peace is not negotiable. She understands that her energy is her responsibility, and if someone steps back, her role is not to fill the space with anxiety. It's to observe the reason behind the silence. Stillness creates clarity. It creates space, not just for him to realize what he's doing, but for you to reflect on whether you even want to continue holding space for someone who can so easily ignore your presence. And here's the paradox: when you stop reacting, you actually gain more insight than when you're actively seeking answers, because people reveal more through distance than they do through words. But stillness is not easy. It requires inner strength. It demands emotional discipline. It asks you to sit with uncertainty without rushing to solve it. And in that uncertainty, many truths rise to the surface about your attachment style, your sense of self-worth, and your emotional maturity. When you remain still, you are not punishing him. You are protecting yourself. You are refusing to beg for breadcrumbs of attention. You are refusing to fight for space in a heart that may not be ready to hold you. And most importantly, you are sending the clearest message of all: my peace matters more than your inconsistency. Now, you might ask, what happens if the silence continues? What if he doesn't come back with answers or clarity? Then you've been gifted a revelation. His silence has done what words often fail to do. It has exposed the emotional ceiling of the relationship. And now, you stand at a choice: to lower your value to fit inside that silence, or to walk away with your dignity intact. Stillness doesn't guarantee that he will return, realize his mistake, or apologize. But that's not the point. The goal isn't to provoke guilt or spark regret. The goal is to honor yourself so fully that someone else's detachment does not unravel you. Because the woman who doesn't flinch when she's ignored is the woman who commands quiet respect. She is not reactive, she is reflective. And that makes her unforgettable. Because in a world where desperation is loud and dignity is rare, she is the still lake that reflects the sky. So, if he ignores you, don't chase, don't explain, Don't try to earn back what should have been freely offered in the first place. Sit in your stillness. Let it ground you. Let it remind you that you are not here to be tolerated or half loved. You are here to be seen fully, deeply, and without condition. And if his silence persists, remember you're not losing him. You're finding yourself. When you choose stillness over reaction, you don't just respond differently. You rise differently. When someone begins to pull away, when their words become fewer, and their attention less consistent, most people fall into one predictable trap. They start reacting. They ask questions. They seek reassurance. They try to restore the emotional equilibrium, sometimes by trying harder, sometimes by tolerating less than they deserve. But what most fail to understand is that a person's silence or withdrawal is not something to immediately fix. It's something to study. In fact, this is the most crucial time to do nothing on the outside and everything on the inside. Because when someone begins to ignore you, what they're really doing is giving you a chance to observe them from a place of emotional distance. And if you can learn to reflect instead of react in those moments, you'll gain more clarity than you ever could through words alone. You see, behavior is a mirror. It reveals what a person is truly capable of, not what they say, not what they promise when things are easy, but who they are when discomfort arises. Silence is one of the purest forms of communication. It tells you what matters to someone, what they prioritize, and whether they see you as part of their world or merely an option to keep around when it's convenient. So, if a man begins to ignore you, pulling back, delaying responses, becoming vague, you don't chase after clarity. You don't hand over your energy just because he's withholding his. You pause. You observe. You let the silence play out. Because in that gap, something very valuable emerges: truth. And truth is not something you ask for. It's something people show you through consistency, presence, and effort, or the lack of it. There's a deep discipline in learning to let behavior speak. We often want to fill in the blanks, to justify the other person's actions, or to give them the benefit of the doubt over and over again. But true self-respect means allowing space for people to show you who they are, not who you hope they might become. And sometimes, the way someone treats you in silence says more than any apology ever could. When you shift from reacting to reflecting, your emotional energy is no longer scattered. It becomes focused, grounded. You begin to ask better questions. Not, why is he doing this? But, what is this revealing about my own emotional boundaries? You stop asking what's wrong with you and start asking whether this relationship aligns with the version of yourself you're growing into. That is a powerful transformation. Because here's the truth. If someone's silence disturbs your peace, it's not just about them. It's about you too. It's about your relationship with discomfort, your need for external validation, your fear of being abandoned. When you're able to sit with those feelings, instead of running from them, you're no longer a slave to someone else's attention. You're not controlled by their behavior. You're informed by it. You must remember, silence is not just absence. It's information. It's either a sign of avoidance, emotional immaturity, or a lack of genuine interest. And none of those are your responsibility to fix. It is not your job to pull emotional weight that the other person refuses to carry. You're not here to overfunction so that they can underfunction. That's not love. That's imbalance. What happens when you stop reacting is that the other person is now fully responsible for what they're creating or failing to create. When you stop chasing, they are left to face the consequences of their own distance. Some will come forward. Some won't. Either way, you win. Why? Because now you're operating from awareness, not attachment. You're letting things reveal themselves naturally instead of forcing them into clarity. Emotional maturity means allowing room for ambiguity without losing your center. It means learning to watch, not to control. And when you become the observer rather than the fixer, you reclaim one of the most powerful positions a woman can ever hold: discernment. You start choosing based on reality, not fantasy, based on behavior, not potential. And that shift alone will filter out anyone who isn't ready to meet you where you stand, not where you're willing to chase them to. So, when he ignores you, pause. Don't explain. Don't perform. Let your stillness become the mirror in which his actions reflect. And in that mirror, you will see everything you need to know. The power is never in how quickly you react. It's in how patiently you observe. Let the silence speak, and let it teach you what words never could. When someone pulls away from you, it's natural to feel an urge to prove your worth, to reach out, to correct the imbalance, to fill the silence with words, gestures, or explanations. This is the instinct that has been hardwired into many of us, to rescue connection at all costs. But there is a quieter, more powerful choice, and it begins when you learn to stop matching energy reactively and start embodying your own. You see, energy speaks louder than anything else. It is the invisible language of all human connection. When someone begins to withdraw, the woman who is grounded in herself, worth does not panic. She doesn't retaliate with anger or mirror their coldness out of ego. She simply matches their absence with presence, presence within herself. She doesn't withdraw from her own center. She returns to it, and that shift is everything. It's easy to match energy when you're emotional. You get cold when they get cold, distant when they're distant. It feels like power, but it's not. It's a reaction, and reaction, by its nature, is rooted in dependency. True power doesn't react. It responds from a deeper place, a place of knowing. So, when he ignores you, when he starts playing games or giving you breadcrumbs of attention, you don't engage in the performance. You exit the stage entirely, not to punish him, but to protect your peace. You pull back not out of spite, but from dignity. You give space, not to manipulate, but to create clarity. You are not trying to be mysterious. You are becoming unavailable to confusion. This is where your energy does the speaking for you. Not through silence as a weapon, but through silence as a statement. A powerful one. One that says, if your absence is your message, then my distance is my reply. No drama, no begging, just a quiet detachment that holds its posture. That kind of stillness is unnerving to the person who expected you to chase them. It interrupts the cycle. It shifts the power dynamic, not through domination, but through discipline. Pulling back with dignity is not passive. It's deeply intentional. It means recognizing that your energy is sacred. It is not something you scatter or spend recklessly on someone who cannot hold it with care. When you stop pouring energy into a space that drains you, you send a loud, clear signal. I know my value, and I don't need to explain it. And ironically, this is often the very moment when the one who ignored you begins to feel your absence. Not because you chased them or begged for connection, but because your energy was no longer freely available. People do not notice your presence until they can feel your absence. And when your absence is not about anger, but about self-respect, it has a weight to it, a gravity. This is the energy that makes someone reflect, that awakens them, if they're capable of being awakened. But let me be clear, this is not about manipulating someone into caring. It's about holding a standard so high that only those who can meet it will stay in your orbit. Your withdrawal is not a game. It is your boundary, a boundary that says, I will not force connection where I'm not being valued. Many people confuse stillness with coldness or detachment with indifference. But real stillness is warm, it's aware, it's full of presence. But that presence is directed inward, not outward. You begin to give to yourself what you were trying to get from another. And that self-sufficiency is incredibly powerful. It turns desperation into discernment, longing into clarity. Think of it this way: if someone leaves the room and you start yelling after them, they know you need them more than they need you. But if they leave the room and you calmly continue with your own focus, your own energy, your own path, they begin to question whether they ever held the position they thought they did in your life. That's not about ego. It's about equilibrium. Every time you stay calm in the face of someone's disinterest, you rewire something important in yourself. You teach your nervous system that peace is more important than validation. That presence with yourself is more valuable than proximity to someone who doesn't show up fully. And from that place, you begin to attract differently, not from lack, but from alignment. So, when someone ignores you, don't become small. Don't start fighting for scraps of attention. Don't try to convince them of your worth. Instead, become even more present in your own life. Double down on your purpose. Ground yourself in your worth. Let your energy speak the truth. I don't chase, I choose. And I choose myself first. The most powerful message you'll ever send is the one spoken without words. The one felt in the silence of your withdrawal, in the steadiness of your self-respect, and in the unwavering energy of a woman who knows what she deserves. When a man ignores you, it's tempting to make his silence about you, about your worth, your attractiveness, your value as a woman. But that's the trap. That's the very place where power is lost. Not because he took it from you, but because you handed it over to his behavior. Silence from someone else can be painful, yes, but it can also be a profound invitation. An invitation to turn inward and reclaim the narrative. When you stop asking, why is he ignoring me? And instead ask, what is this silence here to teach me? You take a radical step toward growth. You are no longer trying to decode his emotional immaturity. You are now decoding your own patterns, and that shift is where transformation begins. You see, most people respond to emotional neglect with self-blame. They personalize it. But the truth is, someone's decision to ignore you is not always about you. It's about them. Their capacity, their fears, their avoidance, their wounds. And the woman who understands this doesn't take it personally. She takes it as data. She doesn't shrink. She studies. She listens not to their words, but to the space between them. That's the beauty of silence. It reveals what noise often conceals. A man may say he loves you, but disappear when it matters. A man may show interest, but vanish when accountability arises. And in that silence, you're offered clarity. If you're brave enough to stop chasing noise and start tuning into the signal beneath it, here's where the growth comes in. When someone pulls away, it's not just about how they're treating you. It's about how you treat yourself in response. Do you abandon yourself to win them back? Do you overextend to hold the connection together? Or do you pause, breathe, and ask, what does this situation show me about my own emotional blueprint? Many women realize, in these moments, that their instinct to chase love is rooted in something much deeper. An old wound. A pattern of equating self-worth with being chosen. A subconscious belief that love must be earned through effort, through pleasing, through proving. But when you sit with the discomfort instead of numbing it, you begin to see clearly. You begin to unlearn. This is the inner work most people avoid because it feels like loss. But in truth, it is liberation. When you allow his silence to be the mirror that reflects your own unmet needs, your own forgotten boundaries, you reclaim power on a soul level. You are no longer waiting to be validated. You are witnessing yourself. And that witnessing is healing. Now, this doesn't mean you tolerate neglect. Growth isn't about staying in silence, hoping someone changes. It's about using that silence to elevate your standards. You realize, if you're capable of ignoring me, then I'm capable of walking away from confusion. You stop explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. You stop auditioning for love. You start embodying it. The more you grow, the less available you become to patterns that once felt familiar. You no longer engage in emotional tug-of-wars. You no longer try to interpret mixed signals. You realize that silence is not a puzzle to solve. It's an answer. And in that answer, you find freedom. One of the most powerful things a woman can do is transform rejection into redirection. Not outwardly, by forcing outcomes, but inwardly, by seeing that every experience, especially the painful ones, can be a teacher. When a man ignores you, he unknowingly gives you a gift. Not the gift of his absence, but the opportunity to remember your own presence. Use it. Use the quiet to ask deeper questions. What are you tolerating that you no longer want to tolerate? Where are you betraying your own intuition? What parts of you still seek validation from places that cannot give it? This is sacred work, and it will make you magnetic. Not because you're playing a game, but because you're becoming whole. And from that wholeness, your energy changes. You no longer attract from lack. You attract from self-awareness. And the men who once ignored you, they may come back, or they may not. But by then, you'll have grown so much that you won't be waiting. You'll be choosing. Not from fear, but from discernment. Growth doesn't mean you don't feel the sting of being ignored. It means you learn how to alchemize that sting into wisdom, into self-honoring decisions, into clearer boundaries and softer hearts. It means you use everything, every silence, every ending, as a step forward, not a reason to stay stuck. So the next time he goes silent, don't beg for a response. Listen to the message. And then give yourself the one thing he didn't: consistent presence, loving attention, and deep respect. His silence is not the end of your story. It's the beginning of a new chapter. One where you finally stop waiting to be seen and start seeing yourself with eyes wide open.